Hello, and welcome back to our Node.js and Express tutorial here on Turbo 360. In the previous video, we set up the project, we implemented the theme, and started configuring the theme with our custom content for Joe's Coffee House. And then we did some deploys just to make sure everything worked on the staging server as well. So here's what we have as of the end of the last video. In this video, we're going to continue customizing the theme by integrating the content for this section and this section over here, and start customizing the content specifically for the home page rather than the entire site like we did in the last video. So let's get into it. So here is the code as of the end of the last video. I'm going to run the dev server and make sure everything still works properly. So here is what it looks like on localhost. And we're all set. So let's continue customizing the template, the home template. So here we have our partials, our nav partial, our head partial. And let's start customizing this top section over here, sometimes called the hero section. We have two slides. This is the first one and then the second one. Let's only use one for now just to keep it simple. But basically, if you want to use two, it's the same concepts apply to the second slide. So here is the hero section right here. The second slide begins over here. So let's go ahead and get rid of this one. Leaving one slide behind, and we have our content over here. Eat healthy and natural foods and all this stuff down here. So that would be this stuff over here. So let's get rid of this. Or let's change this to drink healthy and natural coffee. And let's change this to welcome to our coffee shop. We hope you enjoy our well, we don't want to just redo this, so let's change this to at Joe's House of Coffee. We only brew the freshest coffee from all around the world. We also serve pastries such as cupcakes and brownies. Okay, and let's make sure that that looks okay on the actual site. Drink healthy and natural coffee at Joe's House of Coffee. All right, good. Okay, so let's see here. Just like before, we want to get this content from a data object that's passed into the rendering engine in the main route. So just like we passed in the context here, we want to do a similar thing with the content for the home mustache template. So luckily, the Turbo context that's provided here also provides us a mechanism through which we can create JSON files that correspond to a template, and those JSON files will then be passed through into the template. So what that means is if we create a home JSON file in the pages folder, so home.json, and in here we create a JSON object, and let's create a header key for the header section, and then the header section is going to consist of let's call that a hero section, and then that's going to consist of a header text and a subtext. So this will be the header text and this will be the subtext. So let's call this header, and let's call it subtext. And the contents we had before in the template, we can just put those in here instead. Like that. And now this JSON file, this home JSON file, will automatically be passed to this home template because they have the same name. So we have home JSON and home mustache. So as a result of that, this will automatically get the home JSON contents. Now I want to be clear, this is a turbo feature. It's not a Node Express default functionality. So this is something that comes out of the box by virtue of the turbo environment. So this is part of the context, just like we did with the global from the previous video. So what that means is inside the home mustache, we can replace this with the placeholders, and it gets passed in under a key called page. So we have page, and then the page has a hero section, and then the hero section has a header text. And then we can do the same thing with the p text down here. So page, then hero, and then this one is subtext. So we are using this key right here to render the text down here. So, and I'm going to remove this button because we're not going to use it in this website. And if we run the serve, the local dev server, and we reload the site, we should now see drink healthy and natural coffee at Joe's House of Coffee, so forth and so on. And that means it worked. However, you may notice there is a BR tag here that's showing up, which we don't want to show up. It's actually part of the HTML. That's a line break that should, let's get rid of that, that should actually create a new line break down here. So we don't want it to actually show up as text like we're seeing right now. So what that means is we want to render the HTML, this part right here, we want to render as raw HTML instead of plain text. That's pretty easy. All you got to do is add a third curly brace, and in the Mustache templating engine, that's how you render raw HTML rather than pure text. So if we go ahead and reload now, that line break should actually render as HTML. So we are now set to go. We have our header text and our subtext, and now we need to replace this image right here. So with something more relevant to the coffee shop. So I have a set of images I already prepared for this video. If you want to use it, you can download it in the description section. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're watching this on the Turbo website, it's also in the description, in the description for video 2. So you can go ahead and download the images folder right here, and it'll be a zip file. All you need to do is unzip it, and you'll find these 5 images that I prepared for this video, this section right here. So this background image over here is this one right here. Images slash, this should actually be a slash like that, bg_3 at JPEG. So we're going to replace that with barista JPEG. It's going to be this guy right here. So let's go ahead and import that into our project. So, and I didn't get these aren't special images in any way. I just did a quick Google search and just downloaded whichever ones I thought would look good on the site. So there's nothing special about these images. Now here's the coffee shop project folder. So you may recall that images is a static asset, and static assets are stored in the public directory. So we open that up, open up the images folder, and let's take the barista and just drop it off right here. And now we have barista JPEG right here. Let's go back over here and change that to barista JPEG, and then reload the site. And there we go. Looks good. So just like the other contents, we want to fetch this from the page configuration file. So we want to go to the home JSON, and we want to do another key called bg image, and then that's going to be the image path. So images barista.jpg, and then we want to then change this to page.hero.bg_image and render it that way instead. So when I reload, everything looks the same. So we're good to go. Now, what we want to do next is make sure that this works on the staging environment as well. So just like the global configuration file from before, we have to synchronize our context from our local environment to the remote staging server. So it's the same process. We do turbo, page, and then the name of the page. That would be home. And this basically syncs up the context in the remote environment with the contents we have locally. So now we can do a turbo deploy, and God willing, if everything works, this should look the same. So let's cross our fingers. So I am going to pause the video while it deploys. Okay, the deployment is up. Let's take a look at what we got on the staging server. There we go. So now everything looks the same on staging as it does on local, and it is rendering the contents from the home JSON. And just like the global JSON, if we want to make a change to any of this content, we can just change the home configuration file rather than the actual HTML and redeploying everything. So for example, let's say we want to get rid of this exclamation mark. Very simple. All we do is we go to the home.json and we get rid of it. Just remove it. And then we do turbo page home. Just update the context on the remote. And that should be all set to go. And so now it's gone, and this is coming from the staging server, so everything is all synced up. So that's great. So now let's move on to the next section down here. Let's call this the About section, and let's replace all this with contents for Joe's Coffee House. So we have another background image, header, subtext. We'll leave that as about, and a couple sub images right here. So let's take care of all that. So over here in the home JSON, we now have another section called About, which also has a header text, a sub text, also a background image, so we have our header text, subtext, background image, and let's call these, this is going to be an array of images. And then we'll populate this later. So let's go ahead and fill this out. So we have our header text. I guess we'll say welcome to Joe's Coffee. Coffee shop. Or Joe's Coffee House, excuse me. And for now, in the subtext, I'm just going to use the same as the description from the global, just to save some time. But really, it should be something unique to this. And then the background image for this, I have Barista 2, which is going to be this one right here. So let's go ahead and just slide that over. And we want to do /images, and then Barista 2. Okay, and let's populate these three to start, and let's make sure that that's showing up properly. So we have in the About section, we have page, and then the About section, and then the header text. And then down here we have page, and then the About section, and then subtext. And then for the image, that would be over here. And then we have page, about, and then BG image. And let's take a look at that and see how that looks on the local environment. Cool. Okay. So now we have that, and then let's start filling out this section right here. So we have 3 images here, and they each have their own caption. So let's see. Let's call this special recipe. Let's call it our specialties. Okay, and then we have 3 images. Each one is right here. So you can see them right here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so each one of these has an image URL as well as a caption. So let's go ahead and fill out those in the home JSON. That's going to be 3 objects with a URL. Or no, let's just go with image. And caption. And don't forget the comma, because this is an array and we want 3 of these. And so now we have 3 images and captions, and those images are going to be right here. Coffee, cupcake, and tea. So we have coffee, cup of coffee, tea, and cupcake. So let's drop these guys into the images folder, and we have coffee, tea, and cupcake, all JPEG files. So images, coffee.jpg, tea, and cupcake. And let's hold off on the caption for now, and let's render these in the home mustache. So the way you loop through an array is I'm going to remove the other 2 images. And in the mustache templating engine, the way you loop through an array is you grab the key. So it's page.about.images. So that's right here, page.about.images. And you put a hashtag in front of it, and then you wrap it around the content you want to loop, and then you put a slash at the end of it. So basically what this is saying is that Mustache will render this content for every item inside the images array. And then each item in the array will be passed into this content like it's its own little rendering engine. So we can then get rid of this and replace it with image. That is this key right here. So hopefully that makes sense. And right now we're going to leave the caption alone. So let's see how that looks over here. Coffee, tea, cupcake. And so let's go ahead and focus on the captions now. So we're going to do caption right here, and then inside the home.json, let's go back here and just put in captions, pastries for the cupcake one. Okay, and let's see how that looks. Coffee, tea, pastries. All right, so now we have our content fully fleshed out for this section right here. Don't forget to update the home context on the remote. So you turn off the server and we do turbo page home, and this will update the context on the remote server with the new updates you made over here. So we just added all this JSON to the remote context. And so now if we deploy again, we should see the same thing. So let's go ahead and do that. And just like before, I'm going to pause the video while this goes up. Okay, the deployment is now up, so let's hit the remote endpoint and let's confirm that everything looks the same over there. So the header looks good and the about section looks good. So let's say we want to add a little bit more content here. All we got to do is go to the home JSON, and I'm just going to copy and paste it because I don't really have anything prepared for this part. I'm just going to copy and paste it a couple times, and then all we need to do is turbo page home, and that will update the remote context without having to redeploy or anything like that. And that makes that a lot easier, a lot quicker, just to make small changes like that. You know, it makes that process a lot less painful than opening up all the source code again and redeploying and all that stuff. So, okay, great. Let's make a few more tweaks. I'm just going to get rid of this. You don't have to if you don't want to, but this section right here I'm not a big fan of, so I'm just going to get rid of that. So that would be this section right here. So this section right here I am going to just get rid of. Oh, that's the remote. We want to test it on local. Okay, and we're going to go with this just because. All right, so the main takeaway here is to understand how to update your content between the global content, which is the nav and the footer, and the page-specific content. So we have pretty easy and clear mechanisms to do that in this project and on the Turbo environment in general. And so when you're making these kinds of cosmetic changes on your site, the important thing is to understand which area you should be focusing on, the page JSON or the global. So for example, we have all these hours down here and the social media icons, which we did not change at all. Since you know, this is in the footer, this content really belongs in the global JSON, all right, because it's not really specific to the home page, same as these icons over here. So these icons, social media icons, belong in the global JSON configuration file because these will show up on all the pages. So we want the main thing is understanding how to draw that distinction. I'm going to make one quick change on this. I'm going to change this to Monday through Friday is 9, well, it should be 9 to 12, I guess, and then Saturday and Sunday. So let's go ahead and do that, this time in the global JSON. So we have global, so let's see, this is going to be hours. Let's just call that hours. And this is going to be an array because it's going to have one for each row, right? And each object will have days, day, we'll just call it day, and then time. So then we're going to have one row for Monday through Friday, another one for Saturday and Sunday. So let's go with that. So Monday through Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and let's say Monday through Friday it's 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., 7 a.m. to, I don't know, 9 p.m. Okay. So now we have a global section for hours, and then if we go to the footer now, rather than having all of these show up as individual rows, we can get rid of all of these except for one. I'm going to leave one behind, and then we do global.hours, and don't forget we're looping through an array, so that should be a hashtag, and then we want to close it, and then this will show up for every element of the array. And you may recall each element has a day key and an hours key, I believe. Time key, excuse me, time. And so this should now render according to the values we just did, and there we go. So now what we can do is don't forget to update the remote context. So turbo page global, and then do another quick deploy just to make sure everything works. Okay, the deployment is up. Let's take a look at the remote. Looks good, looks good. And the footer now has our updated hours. And let's say Joe says, hey, I want to stay open later on Sundays because people want to come in late on Sundays. Same thing. So let's say we want to do an extra hour on Sundays. We just change the configuration and then turbo page global and then reload. And there is the change. Great. So we did not work on the social media icons. I recommend that you try that on your own. Give that a shot based on the way we've been working with this so far. And a couple things on the home page. Maybe you want to make this configurable, the about, as well as our specialties. We did not do that in this video, so I encourage you to give that a shot on your own, applying the concepts we worked on throughout the video itself. Make sure you understand which file you need to be updating when. So the social media stuff should go in the global, and then the home, and then if you're feeling ambitious, try heading over to the blog page and maybe changing some of these based on the configuration. Maybe you don't want it to say stories. Maybe you want to remove the header altogether. Who knows? Oh, by the way, notice how the footer shows the same content on the blog page as it does on the home page. And all the context has been properly formatted. Everything is showing up like it does on the home page. That's good. Let's head back to the home page. Oh, that's the error on the nav bar, right? Let's fix that right now. So on the nav header, we have our home href going to index. This should just be slash. That's the home page index. Okay, so let's change the home page. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is focus on the menu content down here. So this menu is going to consist of 3 columns, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to remove this bottom column right here. So it's going to be coffee, tea, and pastries. So let's go ahead and make that change in the home mustache file. So we have a row over here which has breakfast and all of its contents. So that would be this div right here, and then lunch, and then dinner, and then desserts. So desserts is the beginning of the next row. So let's grab that and let's get rid of it. And then wine card, which is this one right here. Same deal. Let's get rid of that. And then drinks down here. Okay, and let's get rid of that. Okay, and then let's go ahead and run the local server, and let's make sure that that second row is properly removed. Oh, this is on the remote. We want to check the local. Okay. Great, so now we only have 1 row. And while we're on here, let's go ahead and check the blog page and then check the home page. Good, so the link was properly corrected, so that's good. Now, in the next video, we're going to actually populate this, but we're going to do it differently than we've been doing the content so far. We're not going to use the configuration JSON files because this data is a little bit different. This is much more dynamic data in that it changes a lot. It's more like the kind of data you would see in a blog post, or perhaps like profiles on a social media site, that kind of thing, where the changes are frequent, the data is much more dynamic. Your specials might change from day to day, and your prices may change, and things of that sort. So really what we want to do is use a content management system to host all of this data, and so that we can add and remove and change items really easily and quickly, and have a robust way of maintaining all that. And that's going to be done through a database. So this is much more dynamic content, which we're going to have to focus on via a CMS or content management system which Turbo also provides. So it's a simple integration of the Turbo CMS. And then we will render all that using the database queries and populating the results in the template using the results from the DB query rather than just hard coding in the raw JSON. So in that sense, it's a little bit more like maintaining a blog where you add new blog posts and make changes and upload images and all that stuff. And that's what we'll be doing to maintain this content in the next video. So that's it. Hopefully you got everything working. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in part 3.